But what was really hilarious and scary, the second time I went to Vietnam, I flew this big crane in the pictures. That heavy lift thing. And it's designed to lift 25,000 pounds and fly 40 nautical miles without having to refuel in standard atmospheric conditions. But believe you me, when you get to that 40th nautical mile, you better be about this far off the ground because, Bub, you're out of gas. So we flew that thing hooked up, they called them tripods, but they were 3 great big fuel bladders. And a fuel bladder looks like a great big 8-foot wide and about an 8-foot tall tire. Looks like a great big tire. And on where the axle would go on each end is an inlet outlet for the hose that hooked up. You could pour in or you could take out, either way, you'd pump it out. And there was a big ring on there, and they'd rig it up where you'd pick up 3 of those with these nylon straps and ropes and I don't know what all. And they rigged them up where it was about an 18,000 pound load. So we'd haul these loads out to the fire base, so somewhere on top of some mountain and stuff like that, and a 155 millimeter howitzer gun, an artillery gun, with what they called at that time a piggyback, was a basic load of ammunition and equipment to use it for I don't know how long, like overnight or something. And that'd make about an 18,000 pound load. And then we'd haul it out and they'd build a big circle of sandbags about this wide and about 4 or 5 foot tall, and we were supposed to drop it in that center of that hole. Well, sometimes we hit that hole, and then sometimes we didn't quite hit that hole. when you get to the top of that mountain, I don't know if you're familiar with density altitude. The density altitude is so high that what that means that the air is so thin because of temperature and humidity, you just run out of power. And that aircraft has a 100-foot hoist underneath that you can let that hoist down that the hook is hooked onto. You can let it down 100 foot. So we'd have it hooked, maybe 30 foot below the landing gear. And when we started to descend, we'd start letting that out because, boy, you just let a controlled crash and aim for that round circle and hope you hit it. And because you're just settling without power. You just run out of power. And you're just falling out of the sky. When it hits the ground, you punch it off, and then you gain your power and take off and pull that, suck that cable back up. So we put on only enough fuel to pick the load up, get it out there, punch it off, and get back to the fuel pad, and we'd be out of gas. Because if you put on any more, you'd never get off the ground with it, let alone land it out there. Well, this particular aircraft has a voice warning system in it. So when there's some problem, no matter what, there's a lady's voice comes on the intercom, and you cannot shut it off. There's no way to shut it off without disabling other systems. This lady's voice comes on there, and we had a constant fuel problem because they never put fuel in it. So we listened to this lady's voice continuously. Fuel problem, fuel problem, fuel problem, fuel problem. Over and over and over. And you become oblivious. This fuel problem, fuel problem. So we got out there at this fire base with one of these tripod, these big 3 fuel bladders, and dropped it at the heavy lift pad. And the fuel problem, hydraulic problem. It comes out, oh boy, when you hear that something other than fuel problem, the old pucker factor goes up. When it says hydraulic problem, that means you're this close to dead because there's no direct input from the pilot and the controls to the rotor systems. It's all electrical impulses to hydraulic cylinders. So when the hydraulics quit, you're just a rock riding on a rotor blade. It quits and the aircraft just falls out of the sky or disintegrates or drives into a mountain or whatever it decides to do. So the thing to do, it has a redundant system in it, so the other system takes over. But 90% of the time, the problem with the first system occurs in the second system within seconds. And you can only put on so many systems in an aircraft, and you run out of power to lift it all. So there's the one redundant system. So we're up on this fire base with this fuel bladders, and we're trying to find a place to land that thing, and there's nowhere big enough to plunk it in without, settling down into 100-foot trees. Well, at the top of that hill, there was one little spot that was just big enough for the 2 gear and the nose gear. And we plunked it in there and locked the brakes and shut that stinker down immediately. And had we not done that, it would have failed on us. Well, we got it all shut down. At that time, with cranes, that's why I volunteered to go back with flying those cranes, because there was a $3.5 million aircraft. Everywhere we went, we had a Cobra Escort and an F-4 on station overhead. So they knew if they fired at that thing, they were going to get that F-4 and that Cobra on their hind end real fast. And they probably were not going to survive. So we shut that thing down and figured out what was wrong. And it needed some O-rings, several O-rings, and probably a hydraulic pump on the one side. Well, the only way to get that is to go back to the cantonment area where we were stationed and get the parts, which entailed a technical inspector and an authorized mechanic and technically a test pilot. But in this situation, one of us pilots could act as a test pilot. So we got a ride back in a Chinook. You know what a Chinook is? The 2 main rotors, no tail rotor, 2 main rotors. And the back door ramp goes down. Well, we got in this Chinook, and the floor, is that aluminum stuff with those diamond-shaped bumps all over it. And then there were protruding through the floor were these rollers, like on a skateboard kind of. They protrude through the floor about a ½ inch, so you could roll stuff in there and roll it right out. One guy could roll a ton of stuff in there on a pallet, and it would roll on those rollers, never touch the floor. And then they secured it with big nylon straps to the floor. Well, my gosh, we got in here, and here's this great big pallet in the center of the aircraft with a 2,000-pound water buffalo on that pallet, live, with fire in his eye, big horns, and out snorting steam, and I don't know what all. And his leg, he's on his side, and his legs are all hog-tied like the cowboys, all tied, and his nose rings tied to his legs. And boy, he had fire in his eye, and his eyes were all red, and he was very unhappy. So we kind of skinnied on by him, got up in the front of the aircraft, and off we went in that Chinook. And it's just ungodly hot over there in Vietnam, so they flew with that ramp open, or you'd cook in there. And all of a sudden, we're sitting in the front of that aircraft, flying along about 3,000 feet, and all of a sudden he looks up at us. That nose thing wasn't tied to his legs at all. And then a little while later, one leg comes out. Before you know it, this guy's standing up, and the aircraft's doing this. The pilots are screaming on the intercom to the crew guys, "What in the world are you guys doing?" They said, "Hey, this guy's loose back here." Well, he got up, and he's kind of moving around. The aircraft's doing all kind of gyrations. It's scary. If you do too many gyrations with a Chinook, the rotor blades start eating each other up, and you're done. He turns around, and in the back, he sees that open space back there. He took ba-dum, ba-dum, and out he went, whoo! He moved all the way to the ground, 3,000 feet. So a 2,000-pound water buffalo got airmailed. And they did some real close circles up there, and we were all over there looking out the side in the little round windows. And boy, when he hit the ground, he bounced kind of one time and then got real big. It was just flat. And that was the end of it. 2,000-pound water buffalo. And then